Climate change is a global challenge that has no borders, and to combat it requires coordinated work by all countries. Many people do not know what it really amounts to, either due to the unreliable sources or deliberate misinformation, which has led to a series of myths about climate change. Climate change is any significant long-term change in the expected patterns of average weather of a region or the whole Earth over a significant period of time. Climate change is about abnormal variations to the climate and the effects of these variations on other parts of the Earth. Although it's certain that Earth has naturally warmed up and got colder during the eras, such cycles have always been so much slower, taking millions of years, whereas now, within a period of just 200 years, we are reaching levels that in the past brought about extinction.
Hi, in this section we'll inform you of how time has registered climate change, its early signals, and its effects. For ages, men had the sensation of climate change. Even though this sensation is more perceived now, it started a long time ago. These changes were insignificant. Winters began to be shorter, but not that much to have an impact on people's lives. Climate change started to be noticed and studied in the early 19th century. According to Building Green, a healthy and sustainable design and construction company, the first oil wells are believed to have been drilled in China around 350 before Christ. Climate change became unstoppable in the 18th century with the Industrial Revolution. The need for better, faster produced, and cheaper products, especially textile products in the freezing English weather, and hence the need for new ways to produce more fabric used for the manufacturing of coats, blankets, and other necessary products for sheltering the inclement European cold and other necessities. In the 18th century, people were not aware of the devastating implications the growing use of fossil-like combustibles will have in our future as residents of this planet. Coal overuse in time before cars and burning of petroleum fuels during the last century had led our climate to change radically. By the end of the 19th century, the need for gasoline, diesel, and other petroleum-derived fuels as propellers for internal combustion engines increased to the point of becoming unstoppable in the 20th century. The future is not promising. It is difficult to believe that some scientists are now thinking about colonizing other planets because some world-leading industrial countries, including the United States, have declined the invitation to collaborate against the climate problem. Some of us believe there is still hope. What do you think?
The question is, what causes climate change? Humans are influencing the climate and the Earth's temperature by burning fossil fuels, cutting down rainforests, and farming livestock. This adds more greenhouse gases to those naturally occurring in the atmosphere, increasing greenhouse effect and global warming. Many of these gases occur naturally, but human activity is increasing the concentration of them in the atmosphere, in particular CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. CO2 is the greenhouse gas most commonly produced by human activities, and it is responsible for 64% of man-made global warming. Its concentration in the atmosphere is currently 40% higher than it was when industrialization began. Other greenhouse gases are emitted in smaller quantities, but they trap heat far more effectively than CO2. Burning coal, oil, and gas produces carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. Trees help to regulate the climate by absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. So when they are cut down, the beneficial effect is lost and the carbon stored in the trees is released into the atmosphere, adding to the greenhouse effect. Increasing livestock farming cows and sheep produce large amounts of methane when they digest their food. The current global average temperature is 0.85 degrees Celsius higher than it was in the late 19th century. Each of the past 3 decades have been warmer than any preceding decade since records began in 1850. We are still able to put a stop to it. Do your part.
Hello, I am David Vizcarra and I'm going to talk to you about the consequences of climate change. The impact and the consequences of climate change has been felt lately and they are very serious. As we know, we are in an interglacial period where it is predicted an increase of global temperatures for natural causes, but above all by the greenhouse gas emissions produced by the human activity. All of this causes a global warming and consequently an unprecedented global rise of temperatures of the oceans. These changes particularly affect us as living beings and of course as human beings, and many of these causes are interrelated. An example of this is a lack of access to clean water due in part to the recurrent droughts, floods associated to a rising sea resulting from the meltdown of glaciers and of large masses such as frozen water in Greenland and the Antarctic. Another example of this is the extreme climatic events such as typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes, or tornadoes, and the flooding around the world. There's too an appreciable reduction of food security by up to 75% due to changes in food production, an increase of biodiversity loss by a 30%. The changes in the habitats would be so fast that the species wouldn't keep up and survive in it. The consequences of climate change are and will be more severe for the planet, and finally for you and especially for the next generations. So if we don't change what we are doing right now, we could be living in this scenario sooner than later in the next decades.
I'm going to talk about actions that can be taken to decrease the effects of climate change. It may not seem like much, but if we work together, you will see the difference. First of all, whenever you're not using any electronic devices such as computers, TVs, etc., you need to unplug them. Why? This is because even though they are turned off, they are still consuming energy. Next, if you need to wash clothes, try to wash by hand. If you really need to use a washing machine, remember to use cold water. And a good idea is to hang dry your clothes. Next, can changing a light bulb really have an impact? Let me tell you, it can. And how so? If every household in the United States switched one regular bulb to a CFL or a LED bulb, it would be equivalent to removing 1 million cars from the road. Isn't that amazing?